Maniac, what did you pick as your ugly point? By the way, I'm super interested in this, Mouse Nick, because even though I know what it is, what on earth would Maniac pick as the ugliness of the world? I feel like he tries to avoid that. He's the guy who wakes up in the morning. Good morning, guys. Nice cup of coffee, little jog on the treadmill. Oh, we're all having a great time. Like, what is the ugliness of the world of Counter-Strike right now, Maniac? What is your point you're going for?
Yeah, you're right, Duncan. It needed an effort for me. Try and find ugly. It's a way to look at life. Look, we're going to circle back to a theme we had earlier on, because one of these days I opened HLTV and I saw ropz's number 18 rank in the top 20, and that hit me like a brick in the face. And I thought, holy hell, what has happened? I think a part of my brain just refused to think that ropz would be ranked so low, because I romanticize him, I guess, as a player because of the last 2 years and how great he is. I still believe he's one of the 10 best players of Counter-Strike we have. And I just thought, what the hell, that cannot be possible. So I went and I actually looked at the results. I looked at Mousesport's year and I thought, holy, that was a terrible year. That actually was. And all of the bad points that you guys were mentioning about him being selfish in situations, that is actually true. It actually turned into this. The ropz that was really strong with Mousesports, that was making so much difference, then turned into a selfish individual who was trying to either save his name or save his game, been already ready for the next step, as you mentioned, that phase move being, lurking around for a long time in the shadow. And that just reminded me of it. Like, damn, that was a bad year. That was a bad year when you have the talent and the skill set that ropz has, which he's kind of unique. Not a lot of players with the rifle out there who can do what he can. But 2021 was ugly. It was ugly as a team. I think it was ugly towards the end as how he was playing in the team. So that is my ugly point. ropz, 2021, not how I romanticized him at least 2 years prior.
I want to bring up I guess this is an American sports concept that people have talked about before. And after our discussion on kind of the NBK move to Maus, it makes me believe that this can possibly happen here. And it's called the Ewing theory, where basically when Patrick Ewing was he was an NBA player, and when he was either benched or injured or like basically left the team played better, even though he was clearly the best star on the team. And I think that there's a possibility that the ranking for ropz is fine. And actually, you know what? I usually don't agree with the positions on a lot of the HLTV list, because I'm like, oh, this guy just farmed stats. He didn't really have that much impact. He didn't win a lot. But this is one where I thought that it was actually justified. I thought that he played pretty, Maus played pretty poorly with the exception of Flashpoint 3. And I think that there's potential, if Maus just do better now, that's going to be one of those moments to me where I just get so much validation in the way I've been thinking about ropz as a player, because who as a teammate wants to see my guy in like not doing anything for the first minute and a half of a round and then suddenly just get one kill then die also. It kind of rubs me the same way as when you go down in basketball. If you just see a guy dribble down the court, doesn't pass the ball at all, but just does a little spin move, dribble, crossover, then just jacks up a shitty 3-pointer. I get the same vibe when I watch ropz play. That's why I like have this whole thing against him, because I know that if I see that on my teams, I'm just like, dude, just fucking die. Like no one needs to watch you attempt this impossible clutch. So I think that with your point about it being ugly, Maniac, I think it's good. I think it's deserved.
There's two ways I can go on this one. One is like, obviously, half of what you just did there was like your real analysis of ropz, and then the other was like a meta-contextual point about what you think about the HLTV top 20 ranking, basically. So I'll do the second one first, which is people will know I'm not a huge fan of the HLTV list. That's why I prefer to call that list a Serbian list. Fire reference, if you know what I'm talking about there, because it's also full of just degenerate shit that shouldn't exist and is fundamentally antithetical and disgusting to me as a human being. But enough about that. Anyway, so yeah, exactly. Yes, because it should never be seen by children.
That's true. Because they just take it at fact.
Here's the problem I have with this list and the ropz angle on it, because I actually do think, look, as much as I agree, I actually do think ropz sometimes farmed and was greedy and selfish and blah, blah, blah. Like, here's my problem with that list, right? I don't know what we're doing anymore if we're calling it like, here's the problem. It should just be something like, I suggested this years ago, but I'm being serious. The name of the list should be, if you want it to be accurate, something like the most successful individual players attenuated by team success. That is actually what the list is. What you're trying to do is, this is the fundamental concept people don't understand. because it also works off not just MVPs, because there's only one of those, it works off like EVPs as well, which is the people who have the better performing stats in each tournament. Well, that particular category essentially is what makes up the body of how people get filtered out on this list. And the downside of that is it is directly based on how deep your team goes in the tournament. If you play 3 maps in the group stage and you have a 1.5 rating, it ain't going to matter whether someone else has half your rating if he goes to the semi-finals. You're not even in the equation to get on the list at that point in time. Essentially, that's treated as like, well, I mean, good job, but like, it doesn't really matter for you. Like, you don't have the sample size and those what the right, there's a million factors go against you. The problem is when we are ranking, if me and you are asked like, who are the top 10 players, top 20 players, we don't do that at all, because we're basing it in an absolute sense of like, who are the best players regardless of team concept. Like, example, if I made if I told Maniac tomorrow, pick in order the 20 players you would start a team with, he's not putting ropz fucking 18th, is he? So as a result, we're doing a different thing when we judge how good the players are. So in my opinion, that is the fundamental flaw of that list. Because when I look at that list, again, look, I'm not the biggest Brokey fan, but even so, our Brokey fans really going, yeah, Elysian ropz, right around the level of Brokey. What? What are you talking about? Elysian ropz are 2 of the best riflers in the entire world. Because their team isn't good enough to go to the semi-finals every tournament. They're at the same level as Brokey, and by the way, below Twists. What? You are aware Twists hasn't been better than Elise for like 1 second in his life, mate. Maybe like ESL New York 2018 or something. That's about it. What are we doing here? So my problem is like the list itself's all over the place. Like you need almost more explanation for why someone is in a place on the list than you do of whether the player's good or how good he is. So to me, it's ultimately a distraction. I don't mind it as a premise because I like the idea people contrast the players and try and review the year. And I do think, by the way, it serves a very good purpose in terms of you get reminded of things like I'll give you an example. When everyone was doing the whole Bit versus Shiro thing, I pointed out, like, Bit barely played the first like quarter of the year. Why are we ignoring that? Like, again, there's a lot of interesting things get brought up, but I do agree. If we're doing the HLTV list, I actually do think ropz is way better than that list. Like, I would probably, off the top of my head, I think he'd maybe like 12th on my list or something, or 11th or something. Like, I actually think a lot of those names don't make sense. Like, again, same for Kserato. I test on Kserato, does it say he's the 15th best player in the world? And like below, I'm assuming, like, get ready, there's going to be like 3 Gambit players, 3, maybe even 4 Navi. Who the fuck knows? So in my opinion, like, some of these don't really check out with the eye test. Now, in terms of the ropz angle that he's had a bad year, I also sort of agree with Mousenick. Like, I actually think in a way it's justified, and more importantly, I actually like it in the sense that, like, I don't want ropz to think that, like, he can play the exact same way and be the best tomorrow in FaZe. I do want him to actually realise he has to, like, look at his game in a really brutally honest way. He's got the skill set to actually be, for real, I think, like, a top 5 player in the world if he gets his shit together. So as long as he, like, humbles himself and, like, sort of rededicates himself, I think he could be amazing. I hope this is just a wake-up call, Sadly, I do notice this is one of the things we've got to do as well in Counter-Strike, in my opinion. There's got to be, like, a gradation to how much praise you get for being on these lists. Like, spoiler, if you are ropz and you're 18th, I wouldn't be bragging about that, mate. You should have been top 10 if things are going well. Look at the team you were on. It's like when Nico, one of the years, Nico was like, I think he was like 14th or something one year, wasn't he? Like, wasn't it like that phase? Like, I wouldn't be proud of that if I'm Nico. That's a down year for me. That's a bad year. Like, 14th is brilliant if you're like fucking frozen. If you crack the list, fucking hell. Like, if you're ropz, mate, like, unless you're in the top 10, don't even talk about it with me. That's not an accomplishment for you.
Yeah, you're right. And I think it has to be a call for action for ropz as well. I mean, I can understand that there can be something demoralizing about being ropz in Mouse with his talent, with his power, and what he basically can do in the game, realizing, hold on a second, we cannot do it. We're not going to win. This is not the team that can win. And then I can emphasize and I can understand that he would then become gradually a bit more selfish and then maybe put less of an effort and less blood into it. Fine. But now you're moving on to FaZe. That cannot happen anymore. That is it. This is when, that moment when you move to FaZe is when you get to decide what narrative it's going to take. Was it, oh my God, ropz is amazing. He's back to his form. He's doing everything in FaZe. Or he just became kind of lazy. He just became kind of selfish. That is, I think we're at a cross point right now. Because if he doesn't have that wake-up call, as you're mentioning, it's not going to work in FaZe either. So he's got it. He's got it all for him. He can right now prove that the little bit of a letdown we saw was just I guess a fruit of the context that can happen, and I can accept that in a way. But he's got to have a reaction as well as a player. That 2021 was not good enough for ropz' standard.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.